Hello, historians. I hope you are well. Ms. Jones wanted to create a video for our writers workshop, DBQ. We have been going through this writers workshop quite frequently during our remote learning time. And so I wanted to kind of just go over a couple of things, repeat myself, because repeating myself is always a plus, so that way we can make sure that we know how to write the DBQ, because very, very soon in the near future, you will be writing a DBQ all by your lonesome. All right, so with that being said, the couple of things that you'll find in here, of course, the DBQ Writing Google Slides. I've created the slides for you. Your DBQ worksheet. You will always have a brand new DBQ worksheet to work off of to make sure that you are organizing your thoughts. You can actually utilize this as well while taking your exam. That's if we have to take our exam online. You will be more than willing to use this. Your DBQ rubric is also within this assignment. And lastly, the hippie analysis. So that way, when you get ready to do your analysis, you know the portions that you have to analyze: historical situation, intended audience, point of view, and the purpose. All right, so let's back up here to the presentation and let me quickly go through the DBQ writing. So these first three things are basically your historical thinking skill. What thinking skill will you utilize in order to write your essay? Will it be a compare and contrast here? Will it be a causation, a cause and effect essay? And these are the kind of things that you'll be looking for in your prompt to make the realization of whether or not you're going to be a causation, comparison, or a continuity and change over time type of essay. And that's always important to kind of know what essay you're going to be writing, so that way you create an essay that has all the portions of the essay that you'll need. All right, 60 minutes, 45 minutes should be a great time for you to write that 10 to 15 minutes to organize your thoughts. You will always have 7 documents. Please, 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 please make sure you're reading the prompt carefully, mark it up, recognize the time period that you're working with. Sometimes the historical thinking skill is mentioned, like compare these two different dynasties or people. What caused this? What caused that? And also the things that stayed the same and the things that changed over time. Most of the time they'll put it in there. Sometimes some of the essays, it will not be in the writing. And it won't be too difficult. You should be able to recognize it. And sometimes some of the prompts will just basically ask you a question, and then you get to choose which thinking skill that you would like to write on. All right, read the documents carefully. Write on the outside of the margins of each one of the documents. And you really want to get the main idea of the documents, kind of recognize what the documents are talking about. And basically when you're doing that is basically, if this was the only document that I had to answer my prompt, how would this document help me? That's how you really need to approach each one of your documents. And then when you're writing the main ideas, also check the sourcing. Who's writing the document? Who's saying what whom is saying? All right, so it's always important. Check the sourcing of the document. Who's speaking to whom? Where in the timeline period is that document coming from? Guys, I apologize if I'm going rather quickly, but I want to kind of make sure I get through this. So summarizing the main idea of the docs, bam, got that. Also, what you want to do is, as you're reading these documents and considering the prompt, you also want to kind of create and think about some categories. You can kind of divide all 7 of the documents up. 2 categories is phenomenal. If it's 3 categories, great. And the AP graders love to see that you situate your essay based upon the categories. Write underneath, write your essay about the categories you have, and then reference each one of the documents, giving us its main idea and all that great stuff. Let's see. Okay, so I did that. Also, excuse me, I'm sorry. Evidence beyond the documents. Let's keep going. So evidence beyond the documents states as you're reading all 7 of the documents, one additional piece of specific historical evidence beyond what is found in the documents that is relevant to an argument about and that states, okay, so I'm looking back at our practice one that's I'm talking about and stating and practicing religious tolerance in the 1450 to 1750. So that's the unit 3 one that we're dealing with. And so basically what the evidence behind beyond the documents is that something that you have read in the past, some video that you may have watched that strikes a portion of your memory that says, hey, this relates to the prompt and to my argument, and it's not found in any of these 7 documents. And I believe that this evidence beyond the document is going to help me answer the question and get this point. All right. So that's that. So when you're looking for the evidence beyond the doc, it's not in the documents. All right. The next thing, the sourcing, the analysis, and the reasoning. That is the HIP that I showed you prior to it. And so basically when you're thinking about the HIP, the historical situation, where the document sits in its larger historical context, basically. And basically what you're saying is historically, what is the interpretation of this document? What is going on in this particular time period that makes it relevant? Let's say, for instance, you decided to use intended audience. Why is it important to whom it is written? Some examples of utilizing intended audience and analyzing with that would be if someone writes a letter or if someone's giving a speech. All right. Next, the purpose of the document, what the document was intended to do, what the document did, what did this document accomplished, or what really and truly, what was this document intended to do during this particular time period? And purpose tends to be one of the easier ones to follow through on. And then lastly, the point of view. Why is he or she saying what he or she is saying in the way that he is or she is saying it? Recognize tone. Are they angry? Why would they be angry? Why are they addressing this particular situation? What makes them, this person that is saying what they're saying, important, and why they are saying it? All right. So that's our sourcing and analysis and reasoning for HIP. And we'll look at the rubric of how many of those sources you'll need to have and how you can organize your essay. And while you're writing your essay, check those things off the box. All right, let me get a quick water break. All right, document grouping, like I told you before, all documents must be used. Utilize one of your documents to actually refute your argument. What is the theme that binds the documents together? Why do they go together? And then look back and make sure you reference the prompt, because that is oh so important. You don't want to throw out categories that have nothing to do with the prompt. And also, sometimes the categories are built into the prompt. If they ask you a question about economic and political, bam, there's your 2 categories. No need for you to think any further. All right. But please don't create an essay that's asking for political and economic and you give them technological innovation. Ooh, AP graders are like, oh, great. But that's not the question. That's not what we're asking. Your thesis. So your thesis is going to be set either at the beginning or at the end. And basically in your rubric, it has to be historically defensible and have a line of reasoning. You got to argue something, pure and simple. You must argue something. You utilize your documents as your evidence for arguing it. And it has to be extremely specific and include your timeline in your thesis. Do not merely restate the prompt. You can utilize one or more sentences, and you can put your thesis statement in the intro and also the conclusion. So make sure you're answering the prompt. That is your argument. You are using the documents to support your argument and your specific by including your categories in your thesis statement. Put that timeline, bam, you got it. All right, our last little piece, it's our historical context or our contextualization. All right, so basically with this historical context, it is set at the beginning of your essay. It's almost like the introduction. It is these 3 to 4 content rich sentences that begin your essay. Right after your contextualization will flow into your thesis statement, and then bam, you can begin your writing. And we'll talk more about what your writing will look like. But basically, when you're thinking about your historical context, like I said before, 3 to 4 rich sentences full of some of the historical terms that may be set in the units. You want to basically set up the story. So this contextualization is the story or the broader context in which your thesis fits into it. So basically, it is the backup story behind your thesis statement. So number 1, 3 things you want to consider. Summarize the immediate past. If the reader was ignorant of your argument, what setup would they need to know to understand your thesis? The events that bump up against the beginning of the time period that you are writing about. Number 2, be specific, not vague. Utilize 2 or 3 vocabulary words associated with the theme of the prompt. And you basically want to name what those things are. You want to explain the meaning of those 2 or 3 vocabulary words or events. And you want to connect it to your argument of the prompt. And then lastly, make sure that your contextualization relates to the prompt. Oh my goodness, it makes no sense for you to create a background story behind exploration and European exploration. And we are talking about the agricultural revolution. That makes no sense. Plus, number 1, the agricultural revolution is going to come before European exploration. All right. With that being said, I'm going to get out of here because I have created a couple of examples. Here's your DBQ worksheet that we've been working with. And I have created a couple of examples that you can utilize for your Unit 3 contextualization from your DBQ. One of them is the religious tolerance from the Mongol Empire. Another one, European exploration of the Americas and how Christianity was spread. With that, also the Sunni and the Shiite conflicts in Islam. You can also mention the Protestant and Catholic conflicts for Christianity, and you can kind of mention some of the people that were influential during that time, like the Calvinist people, those that dealt with Martin Luther, what the French thought about the Catholic religion, the Huguenots. All right, so there's a plethora of things you can utilize. You can the Sunni and the Shiite conflicts. You can talk about the Ottoman and the Safavid split between the successor of Muhammad and what they believed, and then another example could be the restrict or limited foreign influence that was included with religious influence dealing with China and the Qing dynasties, and how the Manchurians came in and how they wanted to keep the traditional ways of China and really limit the European influences that came into China. So those are a couple of things that you can kind of name, explain, and then connect to your prompt, which is here. And don't forget, evaluating the extent to which it states in the periods between 1450 and 1750, practice religious tolerance. If you look back at these contextualization examples, they all deal with religion and how different groups tolerated those religions. All right. So the last thing, how to set your essay up. And I have 30 seconds and I'm going to be quick. Historical context, 3 to 4 sentences. Thesis, 1 to 2 sentences. Your topic sentence is going to come here from your chart. Remember this chart. So you'll name your first topic sentence with your first grouping. You will have your documents grouped in there. You'll analyze them, give the main ideas, give the HIP analysis if you've chosen to do that. And here's the HIP analysis here along with it. And then lastly, repeat it again for topic sentence number 2